told you this would be 100% the truth, however it happens, good or bad. And in the last video, I told you it was going to be a long drive from the Jerry Costello lock and dam to where I had planned to anchor. And I'd planned to anchor on this little offshoot called the Little River Diversion, which was recommended by an app. It's viewers submit the recommendation or the review of the place, but it's called the Little River Diversion, and it's just a little river inlet you can pull up to and anchor. So I drove from the lock and dam that I stayed at all the way down to the Little River Diversion chute. Pulled in there. Number one, it was really small, very small for this size boat, and it was almost like a creek. Yeah, it's safe to call it a creek. It wasn't river size anyway, and I guess it was probably maybe 60 feet wide, but I'm in a 30-foot boat, so it's hard to even turn around. And anyway, I tried to anchor down, and there was all kinds of debris in the water too. Some you could see, some of it, who knows. But man, I couldn't anchor. I didn't feel good trying to anchor there. I did try, but it just wasn't working. So what I ended up doing was heading down, trying to find another anchorage. And unfortunately, the Mississippi River is full of these things they call wing dams. And they're basically long arms of stacked up rocks that come out off the banks of the river. And there's very little room to try to get, you can't anchor inside of the channel markers because that's where the traffic goes. It'd be like parking on a road. So you have to get outside the markers, but you have to have a good enough depth to be able to transit that area. Then you have to be able to set an anchor, and unfortunately there's so many wing dams that the room to go in, drop an anchor, and have it catch is so short that by the time you hopefully have an anchor catch, you could be backed up to the next wing dam. And these are all just piles of rocks, essentially. And I say essentially too much, but they're piles of rocks which would tear a hole straight through a fiberglass boat. It will bust up your props, and I think I did hit something at one point. Hopefully the boat still ran alright, but hopefully nothing too bad was messed up. But anyway, I tried to anchor, but there's so many spots that you just can't safely anchor that I kept going and kept looking and kept searching, and unfortunately I got to the point where I had did the one thing I never wanted to do, especially on a river system with debris and crap like that, and that was I ended up driving at night. And unfortunately it's just me, so I don't have a spotter. I have a spotlight, but it requires me holding it with one hand. I did kind of eventually figure out how to hold it in place against something so I didn't have to physically do the holding. while I was driving. But anyway, it got to a point where it was pitch black. I'm going down the Mississippi River, and I can barely see anything. I have my charts, but things aren't exactly as they say on the charts. And I ended up in the worst position as possible, where I just could not anchor. There was nothing I could do. There's no docks. There's nothing like that. All I could do is keep driving. And then I got to a point, it was so late that I knew my only alternative was to drive till daylight. Unfortunately, I got behind the wheel at about 8 o'clock that previous morning, leaving the Costello locking dam. So I had to drive through these narrow waterways. A barge was coming behind me. I found a place I safely could pull off, and then I very literally just followed that barge all night as it came out. Well, the barge, and they go extremely slow when you're trying to turn something as long as they are when they're fully loaded, as this one was. And so I just putted down the river, and it was horrible. It was frightening. And then it got to a point where you just keep going and keep going until I came out of the Mississippi, where it converges with the Ohio River in Cairo, Illinois. And at that point, like I said, there was nothing to do but keep going. So here I am, absolutely the only pleasure craft, as they call them, or personal craft, on the entire waterway. I'm on the Ohio River, and it's flooded with tugboats and barges, going back and forth, going across, and it was a mess. And all I could do is keep going and keep going and keep going. There I am, driving upstream, against the current of the Ohio River, and absolutely dangerous. I drove. At the end of the day, by the time I got to where I am now, which is anchored down outside Olmsted Lock, I drove 24 hours and 30 minutes straight. I covered a total of 120 miles just in one trip, which is kind of good because, boom, I did a massive leap. Something typically I would have broke down to about 3 days worth of travel. 120. It's hard and long to go 60 miles in one day, especially when you're idling. When you're going up current, you don't even go as far, so those make for extra long days. But it was horrible, man. There was one point where you're driving, it's pitch black at night. All you see is city lights and lights of everything around you. And I'm looking dead ahead the whole time. And then I realize there's a little bitty red light and a little green light, but it's a ginormous barge, and I'm driving straight towards it, and I was incredibly close. Of course, I can move out of the way a little bit faster than, the average commercial boat, but that thing could have very easily just plowed right over me, and it wouldn't have missed a beat. It would have crumpled the entire boat, and just it would have been a casualty. It was horrible. It was cold. The night, it was typically, if you're sleeping, it's absolutely perfect weather. But if you're driving and you're still in these little thin shirts and shorts, man, it starts getting like actually cold. Then you start getting sleep deprived and you start seeing things, and you're just going crazy, basically. Absolutely horrible situation. I wouldn't recommend it on my worst enemy. But I broke a record, 120 miles. A record I didn't want to break. And which led me to my next conclusion of just absolutely boom. You just try to stop early, like, and you get up early and start driving like I normally do, then absolutely being done with by like 4 o'clock. That's a new rule. So you don't end up in something like that again. Of course, this was the worst of all situations because it was between the Ohio River and the Mississippi River, and it was just traffic, absolute full of huge, large traffic. And it's hard to see, even though you have marking lights, it's hard to see sometimes where they're going or how fast they're going, and when you're going against the current, you're hardly moving at all, especially at the speed I was driving, so it's hard to even tell if they are moving. And some of them aren't. Some of them are, though, and you can't tell. So that was a horrible, horrible situation I had to push through. And I was nodding off by the end of the day with daylight. I was praying for daylight. Daylight come, and I still had a little while, maybe 20 more miles to go, and I was, slapping myself in the face. Finally, by about 9:30, I found a spot right below the Olmsted Dam. It's a good spot to anchor on. It's out of the way of traffic. It's outside of the green and red navigation lines. So that was that. Then I was able to finally do the only thing I wanted to do, which was go to sleep. Came in on the front couch and set my anchor alarm, which sometimes even if you're not moving, it goes off just because the GPS is inaccurate within a certain amount of footage. Sometimes 16 feet. Sometimes it's accurate down to the foot, but anyway, I did all that and went to sleep. And finally got some sleep. And then I woke up to a text that had this picture. So I get that picture, and it's like, is this your dog? I was like, absolutely, that's my dog. Turns out, Cypher. I don't know exactly how far he traveled, but he did what he's good at. He went and found him a new girlfriend. Fortunately, he found him a sweetheart of a person named Haley, and Haley has a husky, apparently, and for the most part, they get along pretty good. And so, Cypher's alive and well, hanging out with Haley. And Haley, fortunately, posted an ad, and the Bridgetown Animal Control, there again, thanks to my buddy Bob, saved the day again. Bob Hetherington. I don't know what I'd do without him. He jumped on it, got with the animal control. Animal control had snapped pictures, but didn't think it was Cypher because she said, well, this dog seems aggressive. He's not aggressive, but he's an alert dog. Like, if he's over any kind of property, it only takes him about 5-10 minutes of being comfortable before he'll bark at anything that comes around that's just the way he is. I don't think he would ever bite anybody, even if they were to break in. But he'll bark. So when animal control, pulls up in the yard and sees this dog, yeah, he's going to bark. But she originally didn't think it was him, and sure enough, it's him. So working out with Bob Bob is coming south to Illinois for some personal things, some places he wants to visit, which will fall in line with not too far from where I am. But poor Bob, he's already got to drive from East Peoria way down across to the left side of the state to Beardstown, pick up Cypher, and then he'll be coming all the way down, and it's a giant journey. But thank God he's willing to do it, and thank God Cypher's all right, and he's been apparently very well taken care of. Of course, he probably already made her fall in love with him. He does that. He's a little Mac. But anyway, so I'm glad he's safe. I'm glad he's healthy. And it's only a couple days from now before we'll finally get reunited. So, and I've tried to stay optimistic. Yesterday I was beating myself up and just thinking, hating myself for, even though he's a travel dog, he's travel ready, I was beating myself up for taking him on a live-aboard status type boat and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, I'm eternally grateful to Haley for taking care of him, for Bob doing everything under the sun to make sure that he gets returned back safely, and that's that. So I went through hell and woke up to heaven, and hey, such is life. But that's the latest update. I better go ahead and end it. This video is getting long, but some more to come from all that. But thanks for watching.
Take time.